Okay, the whirlwind is over.
That's what we think.
That's right. It's just a pause. We're in the center of the hurricane.
Better than a fire NATO.
A fire NATO. Oh my gosh. Yes, in California. Yep, global warming's a hoax. Climate change is just a figment of your imagination. So it would be impossible to not be contradictory to say there's a non-dual teacher, because a teacher would need students. As soon as you have teacher and students, you have dual, right?
Yeah, it's. I think anytime we use the reference non-dual, too late.
Yep.
Dualists may from time to time concern themselves with the idea of non-duality, but non-dualists rarely, if ever, concern themselves with the idea of duality.
They stand hard and fast on the ground of non-dual. And of course, when there's a ground and there's someone standing, the wheel keeps it turning.
The presumption that we're in a condition of some kind, which sensual feedback loops and mental feedback loops seem to imply. So that our, tendency to relate to whatever living is biased toward there being a condition that I'm in. When we're asleep, is there a condition? There's an impression field if we're dreaming, or who knows how many different layers of, attention are possible during sleeping hours. But the somewhat emphatic belief that we're in a condition while sleeping is a lot lighter. Perhaps sometimes, if not frequently, absent. But while in the waking state, we are conditioned bound. So we're the product of all of these competing appetites. Like air, for instance. It's a really powerful appetite. We don't notice it so much if our breathing is, somewhere near normal and we're always in an oxygenated environment. But, try moving into a low oxygen environment or underwater or something, and the appetite of air is
very pointed.
Yeah, that's really on you, right?
Right.
Yeah. Similarly with, water or food or, touch. So we're, downstream or the product of quite a rainbow of appetites. And our, mental and emotional or behavioral restlessness and insecurities and disappointments or even the stress of joyful anticipation. Is this, streaming onslaught or invitation of various appetites. Even thinking, right, and orientation, which we do with incredible hunger. Can be, incarcerating.
And so could the opposite of it, like the pursuit of, the absence of stimulation or diversion, that
Well, sure.
You can get as equally obsessed.
No question.
With a, we call it a state that's labeled blissful or seen as blissful. And as soon as there's a disturbance come in, you know how
That's right.
How strong that appetite is.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, right. We can measure the strength, the inherent strength of the appetite by what happens behaviorally or sensually when that appetite is frustrated. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, if the appetite is for, blissful and mental quietude in the meditation hall, and the wind's blowing too strong, or someone's breathing too loud, or the heating system makes a lot of noise, we can get really irritable.
Yeah, that damn weed whacker, chainsaw.
Yeah.
Lawnmower.
So, despite the appearance of peace and sanguine delight, we're all just, a fraction of a centimeter away from the next breakout of irritability.
I just saw a scenario, the facilitator of a peace meditation. You shut the fuck up. We're trying to cultivate peace over here.
Well, yeah. Hey, we've all been there. Yeah. Oh, man. Now, just to be fun about it, I mean, everything else that appears to be appearing on the, socio-political, geopolitical, cosmic scale are all downstream, of the demands of these fundamental appetites. And, we wonder why a life well lived may or may not be very satisfying, or wealth, or fame, or success, or whatever we might be able to indulge in the so-called world, may or may not be very satisfying. And a lot of our religious or spiritual myths, you might notice, we tend to worship men primarily, occasionally women, that appear to have transcended their fundamental appetites. Like Ramana Maharshi was being eaten by various creatures and his flesh was oozing plasma and pus, but he had no idea. So, the appetite of his physicality, or his need to eat or eliminate was, transcended, so to speak, through whatever means, some kind of yogic trance or magical enrollment in the self, as he might refer to it.
The body was still an anchor for his identity of some.
Well, he was still alive, if the story had resulted in his death, we would never have heard of him, since the story resulted in someone apparently intervening, caring for him, making sure his wounds were dressed and, his basic physicality was maintained. Well, he became a great sage.
He came out of that
He did come out of it.
and then started caring for his own body, I guess.
Yeah, I think, yes, he took a little more care of his body. Jesus is the same thing, right? I mean, the 40 days and 40 nights fasting in the desert, refusing all, right? So we can see how profound, in a sense, the foundational appetites of being are, a challenge for us, perhaps a burden for us. And then, tend to worship or imagine stories of great beings who have transcended these appetites. We get excited about breatharians, right? But monks and nuns are revered because they don't fuck? What? Or they don't handle money? But, that's great. They shave their heads and put on robes, and now they're reverable. Because why? Well, because they've given up what? Base, sinful, certain base or sinful appetites? What, like human touch? Yeah, great move.
Or if you turn it around, they dedicated all their life to contemplating and relating to the divine and however they see it.
Okay, so then we envy that. Someone that's dedicated their lives to the cultivation of, prayer and service and, nonviolence, right?
Aren't the Hasids that way? Hasidic?
They're insane.
With the acrylic hues.
We just watched a documentary on it
Oh, yeah.
last night. The night before. 3 people leaving the
Water.
water.
It's pretty strict, isn't it?
Yeah, there was like a shunning thing, and
Oh, yeah. I guess any path.
there's a real, we're outside the law in order to maintain our population, and women can be really hammered.
It's interesting. Any form like that might have been fresh at one point. Then after a decade, a century, and on, then gets codified into this structure that has no flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, anything and everything becomes a fetishized superstition instantaneously. Even the notion of non-duality becomes another fetishized superstition immediately. Because the basic orientation, right, the root orientation is as, a sensual, sensorial being dependent upon all of these forces that we don't recall signing up for, like breathing and eating and eliminating and sleeping. And, accompanied by the superstitious projection and imagination of the supreme being or beings that created the universe from nothing, that created the oceans and the animals and the trees and the insects, that, caution us against sin and indulgences, and gave us 10 commandments and a bunch of other rules to live by. So, it becomes kind of a clusterfuck of superstitious clutter.
It's kind of ironic, that story. Moses and stuff, and him coming down and smashing the idols. And it's one idol for a more subtle uh, idol, in a sense.
Absolutely.
It's,
Yes.
You know, it replaces and appears to elevate.
It appears to elevate, but look at the idolatry of Buddhism and Hinduism and the Judeo-Christian and of course the Muslim and on and on. Every single look at the idolatry of capitalism, communism, socialism, totalitarian states, the idolatry of the corporation. You know, we're whatever we are appear to be wired,
Yeah.
right, toward fetishized superstition. And you know, when it gets out of hand, it becomes, you know, fascistic, totalitarian, and genocidal.
Yeah.
Why? Because of the, I'm not sure I know why, but I could argue for the fundamental reason of, you know, the irritability of having to cope with these, you know, uninvited appetites, and the competition for resources, comfort, and security.
So then you team up.
Well, yeah, we're really dangerous because we know how to team up.
The words that I've used in playing around with looking at that tendency is tribal exceptionalism. You know, we're it, man.
Yeah.
And of course, the inferior, we can look outward and give all kinds of reasons
Right.
why they're missing something that we have, and vice versa. And it's like, where does that mechanism come from? Again, it seems to be fitting what you said. It's a product of a strategic effect of satisfying an appetite, even if it's a spiritual, elevated appetite,
Whatever the appetite.
right? Or a hedonistic one.
Yes.
And I know a hedonist. I'm not saying that facetiously either.
Right. I mean, is realization the pursuit of realization, which is not something that's even recognized in the Judeo-Christian, right? Maybe on the Gnostic side of things. Well, you know, Kabbalah, you know, I mean, they get all crazily dualistic and stuff and rant on and on about, you know, chaos and Satan, right? And how to be spiritually elevated. I mean, you know, it's like, what the fuck?
I know Catholicism, they call it, it pushes it into the future. You're not meant to know these things in this life.
You're
faith,
completely enrolled
have
in
faith, do the practice, and you know, if you do it really well, when this life's over, you're in a good position.
they're all the same.
Although, wouldn't you say, like the Buddhism, that's here and now, or Zen is here and now? It's not like something you have to acquire per se. Although it does sort of point to this rather than that. You know, abstain or develop. Yeah, there is always some sort of
Always,
development.
there's some kind of enrollment in a process to learn how to cope perhaps more skillfully with fetishized superstition, all rolling out, you could say, of the root of these, you know, involuntary appetites. For meaning, for validation, utility, success, recognition, security. Not to die. The avoidance of pain. I mean, can a human being live let's say cooperatively, non-violently. Without fetish, superstition, belief, orientation.
Seems like it happens for a period, and then it starts to fall apart. I mean, if you look at history,
Yes.
or actually you can look at one day in the life.
Yeah, give yourself, give yourself a 5-second candid review.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You don't really have to look too far.
No, you don't.
Backward, forward,
Ah, ah,
Peace.
ah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so yeah, if you look at whatever history suggests, the way that call it human expansion, population growth, territoriality, exploitation of natural resources, whether it's the oil or the mammals, the birds, the oceans. There's no ethos of cooperation or ethos of sustainability. We're brought up in a, codependent social system and taught how to compete to become gainfully employed and repeat while the oil and the gold keeps burning. Yeah, but we're all in a sense naive. I mean, even those of us that have our hands on the dial or the switch, um, they're naive too, right? The power brokers, the influencers are also naive.
They fall into the trap, as I guess we all do, is looking out of their own eyes and seeing an inferior aspect
Sure.
that's at the service of the superior aspect, and it's like, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that boat gets tipsy over time.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have the means, whether it's through influence, money, power, military, whatever the means, right? If your army has more food than the opposing army, right? Whatever tips the scale in your favor. It seems that, we have exploited that over and over again. Okay. So within this involuntary malaise, this blame-free, all is forgiven malaise, what do we do if there's anything to do? I mean, is Rupert Spira going to come and save us by talking fancifully about the nature of awareness? Oh, fuck that. It becomes really, if I may put a spin on it, painfully, excruciatingly intimate. My appetites, right? My firsthand experience. Whether there's anything that could look or resemble freedom in the midst of that, or whether it's all just compensation. And if you're gifted or talented in one way or another, then perhaps one's compensatory gifts and skills could turn out to create more happiness or satisfaction than not.
And my mind goes towards a state where if you have abundance, okay. If you have very sparse, okay. You have warmth, okay. You have cold, okay. You have this, okay. You have that, okay. Um, and you don't necessarily know where you are until life does what it does around you. And if it gets under your collar and you start barking at life, then it's like, oh, okay. That's that in itself can sometimes be a curious and interesting revelation.
Sure.
But whatever. I was going to say bondage of choice, but choice is one of those very elusive things.
Everything is elusive if you give it, enough attention, enough meticulous attention given to whatever we imagine is arising or binding is going to become murky and, elusive, unquenchable.
Yeah, I learned today that the second coconut donut isn't necessarily better than the first one.
Yeah, it's right.
Certain experience there. And the longer you try to be in the experience, the less healing it, to some degree, it becomes.
Yeah.
So it's almost funny. It would be like someone saying that, don't give me too much freedom. I kind of like the challenge, being in bondage and seeing how free my mind can be.
That's as good a puzzle as any. Yeah. We can and do say things about ourselves either to be socially friendly, acceptable, politically correct, and affable. But everything that we say about ourselves is, it's a role, right? It's a mask. It's a compensation. It's gone. It's evaporative. You can't really rely on much, especially when it comes to ideas about oneself. It's all made up. The urgency, the reflex to orient around sensual inputs, the five senses, spiritual or other lofty topics, what's happening in the world according to the news that reaches me that I take the time to read or hear about. I mean, it's all completely involuntary. Wow.
The stories and the conjuring.
The stories, the conjuring, the memory of the day, you know, what you or I or anyone did a moment before now or might anticipate doing in the future, whatever's wafting through, right? The so-called observable memory field, the tangibility, the imagined tangibility of the memory field is just involuntarily appearing. Which is even true for, let's say, people that are really concentrated and focused, performing musicians, or an engineer, or, someone in the boxing ring. I don't have any, particular skills. So as a, more or less lazy person, yeah, everything is kind of involuntary. It's easy to see. If I were very skilled and gifted, as a craftsman or an artist of some kind, then, might be, I might take more credit for it. Yeah. But since, as someone with nothing to show for basically anything, it's like, how do you get so lofty? How do you idolize yourself when you're made of so little?
Right.
Let's say a conversation turns towards whatever, enlightenment, self-realization, radiant presence, traveling lighter, awareness, the false sense of authorship. I mean, go on and on and on and on. We have, clever monikers from contemporary spiritual teachers. Some of them are friends of mine. And, all of history to look at. But it's like, what? You see the energy to enroll, to become enrolled, right?
I see the burden in it. Suppose you're impressed with an incredible idea and you
Yeah.
manifest it. And then the world is saying, okay, what's next? You
Yeah.
do better, and then you don't do better, you do less. They go, well, what's wrong? You lose it? All of a sudden it's like, why does anyone care? Why should you? But you fall into the trap of, hey, ain't I great? And then you go, yeah, show us again.
Yeah,
Do it again. Do
absolutely.
it better.
Sure.
Is this all you got?
Oh, the pressure on successful, people in whatever endeavor is intense.
Yeah.
And to please whom? Themselves?
Well, that's
Their parents? Their local community? Their
the
millions of fans?
ironic twist to it. Who am I pleasing when I want approval from anyone? Where did that get hooked in there?
Yeah.
I just saw a short thing about a child and the mother paying attention to the child, and as long as the face was engaging and reinforcing, oh, look at this, the child was fine, and then the mother suddenly went stone-faced,
Mm-hmm.
and the child tried all these things and got more and more upset,
To get the reaction.
and then was really irritated
Yeah.
and
Yes.
disturbed,
Yeah.
and then the mother stopped doing it and then reconnected.
Reconnected, yeah.
And to illustrate how hungry even
Yep, there you go.
free language
Yeah.
there is for that
Ha, ha, ha,
responsivity to the living
Yeah,
base.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
To
right. To the animus.
the animus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
It's another profound appetite that, we don't take much notice of.
And then if you don't get it, or if you did get the stone face, what are you looking for, and what are you more hungry for over and over again?
Yes,
To compensate.
that's right. So if you look at the basic hunger, thirst, not just for water, but hunger and thirst, as generic must-haves for attention, for novelty, right? For interactivity. Pretty intense. And those driving forces, to which we have become perhaps habituated or desensitized. We don't notice how profound they are. But we can notice our melancholy or depression, anxiety, when these appetites are not met in a, certain way, congenial manner. Then we become distorted, right? Our thinking becomes distorted, our behavior becomes distorted. We might become more prone to, addiction and repetitive loops, right?
So does
So
that
shame and exaggeration.
So does that suggest that life itself has a mechanism, aside from any assumed choosing, to engage with life, to interact with life itself, with or without an identity connected to it, but because it's reinforcing, and then the other has all these compensatory disturbances. Got my own collection, of course. Everyone's got something.
Well, whatever is left of the natural world, for however little time it remains, yeah, we can see, in an enviable or nourishing way, how the rhythms of the seasons and the weather and the plants and the fishes and the food chain, however ruthless it may be, um, is a fusion of relatedness, and a fusion of relatedness. In the human being, it seems that we fail to be nourished by this unspoken, call it cosmic or natural rhythm of relatedness. And become neurotically attached to our cell phones, our, televisions and radios. Yeah.
Something just struck me about that, as I can relate to what you just said. How about that time where you are the antenna, you are the radio, and it's a direct encounter.
Yes.
And if you balance it today somehow, or something does, it might just ease some of that drive, that hunger, or that impulsiveness.
Yeah. I mean, spiritual seekers, and not just to pick on them, but, what are we after? Besides the, codependency or the, or the worship, all this superficial stuff. Constructive spiritual discovery, right? That's a little more mature than typical codependent agendas. What's the takeaway there? What is joy or peace or relatedness, nourishment? Yeah.
Mine runs strong in the relatedness part. But how relevant to presence can I be? Or, can I be tuned to? As opposed to, can't wait to get out of here.
Sure.
And I'd say a good percentage of time when I'm around larger groups of people,
Yeah.
and I feel awkward, I want to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Go for a walk in the park, or
Yeah.
do something else away from all that. And I have a feeling or sense that if some appetite were satisfied inside,
Mm-hmm.
there wouldn't be a need to stay or go. It would just do what it does, much less of an urgent way.
Possibly.
Or maybe I'm idealizing the state.
Maybe. See, that's that's what we have. I mean, right? Spiritual seekers, even
Exactly.
so-called more experienced spiritual seekers,
Describing an antidote.
continue to idealize, right? And
Right.
and
Right.
approach antidotes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For what? For, the disquietude of the conflagration of all of these horrible appetites.
I just bought a bus ticket up the mountain. That's it.
It's really, yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, if there were something that you could call, transcendence or peace of mind or enlightenment or something like that, well, fuck, what would that be?
Well, it's almost ironically being at peace with discontent, being at peace with the fact that you want to get out of there, or that you want to stay, or whatever.
It could be, but it could also be trans-behavioral, trans-evaluative.
That's what I was trying to sort of describe, but I was getting lost in my desire to have it be a certain way. So clearly trying to fit into
Yeah, really.
a paradigm
You and everybody
of
else.
all of it. It's like, oh, there it is. That's Dave's
Bingo.
take.
Yeah.
It's clearly
Right.
a shade.
Right.
Dave.
I mean, do we want to be relieved of a thing? Do we want to encounter, some kind of exotica or erotica? do we want emptiness? Do we want, make, when you go see the hot dog vendor and you say, make me one with everything, right? What do you want?
Relish the moment.
Right. And do you want the same thing today that you wanted yesterday or that you want tomorrow, depending on what you read or heard or what satsang you went to or whether you had a good yoga class or not? Now I used to think I wanted that, but that didn't work out. Or maybe I even got what I thought that I wanted, and that's still no good. So now I want what I want now.
Mm.
According to whom?
Mm.
Oof. Then someone will say, oh, there's no self, right? There's no person here. There's no this, there's no that. Consciousness is all there is. All there is consciousness. You're suffering from a false sense of authorship, Get off the me bus and get on the radiant presence bus, right? See what it feels like to be exonerated from appetites and exonerated from orientation. You're like, oh, all right, I'll try that. What does that feel like? And who knows what's success?
And then you feel bad when you fall off the bus, you get kicked off the bus, or not.
Who knows?
In other words, if I buy into someone's antidote,
Yeah.
am I setting myself up for, great, it's working today. What's
Sure.
wrong with me? Now it's not working. I missed
Absolutely.
The bus today.
If once you've got your eyes aimed or set on either an antidote, which is I want to get an antidote is I want to get rid of shit,
Yeah.
right?
Palliative.
And then having an exotic or erotic encounter with something special, that's attraction. So it's both attraction and aversion towards one's idea of a state change that could be called kensho, realization, you name it. So then immediately already we have, some kind of idealized version. Whether the idealized version is I want to ameliorate what I don't like, or I want to be one with God.
It just reminded me of a fellow who wrote a book, Date with the Gods, and he said he had an intimate encounter with a beautiful, otherworldly alien woman,
Oh,
and
yeah,
very straight-faced about it too.
far out. So, I mean, hey, that's a guy you want to talk to or a woman you want to talk to if they've had some kind of, super sensual consummation with alien presence, whether through, physical penetration or something more subtle than that. Oh, there's a better orgasm in town. When does that workshop?
Trans-terrestrial, you might say.
Trans-terrestrial orgasmatron.
Out of this world.
Count me in, yeah. That's right. That's right.
Why on earth would you limit yourself to the earth, right?
That's right. If you haven't gone Pleiadian, you don't know what sex is.
But I do remember the groupings of people at certain retreats where they were so eager to tell their encounter of third kind stories.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How alive they felt when they were engaging in that, on that level.
That's right.
And that, I thought about a lot simpler than that. Good night's sleep, waking up refreshed,
That's cool.
having a clear head.
Or have a tick jump off the back of a white-footed mouse onto your ankle.
Oh, what kind of tick?
Exactly. That's right.
Apparently there's Asian something horn chicks now added to the mix.
Oh man,
When-
it's not one insult; it's a million of them.
But what if our central identity was the tick? Life would be,
Well, there you go.
where is the warm, bloody host today?
That's right.
That it's like a 5-star hotel when they
Yeah.
strike a healthy vegan. Is that blueberry? Is that a note of blueberry and
Yeah. Tick as a
Right.
super taster.
next to the land sharks? Oh boy.
So our, our capacity, tendency, wiring, who knows, for orientation, accusation, derivation, relevance, implication is just on us. It's just profound. It streams in. And we rarely, if ever, look at the default momentum of ourselves and call it sufficiently into question that under the loving gaze of our own attention, passionate, sincere attention, we rarely get a chance to see the matrix of these appetites and compulsions and magical gifts that we already have. And who knows, discover what else this might be besides the mere percolation and assertion of appetites and orientation. And it's very, it's fun and challenging to play with it. One reason is that our bias toward presuming ourselves to be in a condition is so strong that we look for another condition to occupy other than the one that I think I'm presently occupying. But the appetite for orientation for a new or different condition is strong by inertia, by momentum, by being unconscious of it. It's strong. It's not particularly strong, but because it's unnoticed, it has a certain kind of momentum. So we don't even know, without a certain kind of radical departure, how to even consider present experience without the bias of hoping to satisfy some kind of idealized condition, a new condition. What if we're just not in a condition? Then the reflex of what we call mind to orient and organize, self-assess, accuse, right, share, it could quite possibly just spontaneously deflate.
Remember an image and a feeling that went with it of what appeared to be me inside a beaker of mixed colors.
Mm-hmm.
And not identified with any particular color. They're swirling around and doing all kinds of stuff. Yet there's this peaceful face within the midst of it all these these forces and impressions, energies, preferences.
Yeah.
And just this present without. It wasn't disengaged, but it wasn't hooked in.
It's a very curious texture, being whatever present might suggest, without being hooked. One finds oneself perhaps without need, free from the pressure or the anticipation of implication or orientation. That one is relaxed from the the hubris of being in a condition.
Yeah, we're so sure of the coordinates,
That's, yes.
trajectory,
Yes.
the starting point, the home base, the
Yes.
launch pad.
Yeah, right. And my familiarity with myself as a feeling, experiencing, sensorial, emotional, satisfied and dissatisfied creature comes, rushing at me with, right, no let up as concerns this so-called reflex, right, of being so sure.
What's nice about that right now is that my own worst critic that tortures me at times
Yeah.
is completely fallacious
Oh.
in its premise of solid matter of
It
fact.
can't know anything.
Right.
This torturer.
But somehow it's really sure. I've been here before and it sucks. When will it ever change? Oh my God, it won't.
Yeah.
Now, who is the author of that?
Yeah, that's right. Who wrote the story?
And why does it seem to be?
That's right. Who gave that asshole a big pen? Or a typewriter, Yeah.
Right.
Right? But see, our hunger for orientation is so profound
Right.
that we listen to that critic with, absolute loyalty.
Hello, old friend.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Right.
pain in the ass.
Well, it's challenging, at least for the number of years that it appears to be challenging, to consider whatever the nature of presence might be, free from the distortions of that, right, identity, of that inertia, of the reflex to orient, through memory, superstition, fetish, expectation. Phew. To get overly excited about spiritual stuff, it has its benefits, but there's also the fee of now orienting toward the imagined fetish of spiritual stuff, whether that's robes and candles and incense and big funny hats and repetitions and empowerments and how much fucking superstition do we have to deal with? Even if it's Zen. I mean, Zen is still loaded with superstition. A certain posture, a certain cushion, facing the wall, suffering, pain and discomfort, having your shoulders smacked so that you can stay in your ideal alert place, listening to the rantings of fools. What? Just, Jesus. But shut the fuck up. But we overcomplicate. We overcomplicate everything. I mean, even a poetically oriented so-called Advaita teacher, non-dualist, the moment you start talking about awareness and attention and concentration and life and one and two and this and that, you're like, that's just too much. It's just too much. Because then we start to enroll ourselves primarily inwardly, right? We're enrolling ourselves inwardly to orient around some kind of, right, cosmology of what's right and what's wrong and what's real and what's not, and where I am now and where I ought to be and what I'm going to do to get there.
So it's occupying that monkey mind.
Absolutely.
And you get some relief, but it's still going to create another scenario of discontent or disillusionment.
Yeah.
After the guru falls from grace or who knows what.
Everything's going to fall from grace. And yet all there is grace. It kind of depends on your, right?
Well,
it's all.
Right. The unrealistic expectation of some form of ultimate perfection.
Yeah.
Bullshit meter is off the charts. You don't know that, right? And you're disillusioned because you projected all that shit in
It's all been
one
projected.
location,
That's right.
one channeled being.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Oof. So that's how we keep ourselves occupied. Twitter, Oprah, CNN,
The Young Turks.
the Young Turks. Absolutely. Folks at the bar or at the meeting, whether we're still drinking or not.
Gosh, that's one thing I generally have little patience with. Talking to someone that's under the influence, particularly drinking,
Sure. Yeah.
find it to be a fuzzy place.
Well, it's unrelated and unrelatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily access it 5 minutes later.
Well, if the drinking is addictive or compulsive, right, then the drinking is being done, we could say willfully or involuntarily, they're the same to me, to medicate, self-medicate, right, to avoid intimacy and revelation, to, walk into, right, the so-called fuzzy, murky comfort zones of inebriation where I'm less injurable, whether from others or my own mind. So yeah, trying to scratch a little bit of intimacy and joy, from someone that's inebriated is impossible to do. Ecstasy might be a different story. Who knows?
I don't know what that's about. I wouldn't mind finding it. Just the idea of having to need something,
Yes.
particularly on a regular basis, is to me the opposite of what freedom might suggest.
Yes. Well, there we are again. I mean, oftentimes we can say that alcohol or any kind of, addictive intervention is a way to respond to the inalienable and involuntary appetites that we have. And or the frustration of, right? The frustration of affection, of novelty, ease of being, creativity, right? Constructive tribal connection, intimacy, right? Through the frustration of all of these things, spiritual succor. If I'm not nourished by these other, call them more constructive things, then I'm behind the 8 ball. And if I see other people apparently functioning or being happy or being constructive, then I feel even worse about myself. And I want to medicate up like nobody's business.
Who am I to judge anyone else and what they naturally feel the need to do?
Yeah.
So I can't relate to it, so what?
Yeah. Right.
Is the world here for just me?
Your world is.
That's right. I could walk away. I just don't have to,
Yeah, sure.
put a spotlight on it, mock it, per se.
Yeah.
That part I don't like in life. When I observe in myself, quietly even, or I observe someone extrovertedly, singling out a person and making a spectacle of them and being entertained at the expense of that person.
Yeah.
And
Right.
kindness, sensitivity, friendliness is just not a part of that. I don't
Yeah.
even know what to describe it as, but where does that shit come from?
Well, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of, wounds and wounding culturally, in the family, education, addicted parents,
Yes, so
poverty.
So if my identity is still centered around that person with the timeline called Dave, it's always, it's going to look through those eyes and see the same kind of
Sure.
thing,
Yes.
you know, or compensate in the same similar manner
Yep.
from it.
Yeah.
Until there's these instances where it's not tethered for some reason to that
Right.
specifically,
That's right.
that identity.
Yeah. When we enjoy, if we notice it, a lapse in the inertia or momentum of myself and my implication and my agenda and my will and my rights and needs and right reflexes to be satisfied by whatever. You know, this whole crescendo of myself seems to get in the way of everything. Even on a small, you know, even on a subtle scale.
Must have been an emperor in a past
I
life.
must have been something because I really am important now. Or I must have been very little because I'm overcompensating.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is marvelous, isn't it, to be relieved when we notice it of the inertia or momentum, right, of our own so-called self-will, whether the inner critic or the reflex to orient. Yeah. That's the gift, I would say. You know, if someone's on a so-called spiritual path, right, the gift or the fruit of those efforts would be the cessation of self, lapse in self. And that, you know, when it comes to visit, in the curious ways that it does, right, come to visit, that's freedom from orientation. Freedom from being in a condition.
I like that. No delay. No requirement.
Ah. Yeah. Yeah, here this is, and there's no delay. That's really strange for the habit of mind to attempt to contemplate or have any relationship with. Because mind is always delay. Self is delay. Implication is delay. Will, choice, decision, it's all delay. And delay is just a very frustrating way to live, or it's an unsatisfying, malnourished way to live. Being always self-consumed and suffering from delay. Oh my God. That's where all the apprehension, you know, you could say, finds its way in. Through delay. Is the collapse of the experiencer collapse of experiencing?
Not at all.
Not at all. Fascinating.
If not enhancing.
Yes, could be enhancing. Sure.
Your bandwidth appears to be limited to that identity of self, and then all of a sudden, the spectrum is in and out of this world.
Isn't it curious that we are capable, gifted with that quality of direct encounter, that quality of, you know, revelation without having to be, you know, too demonstrative. The collapse of the myth of the experiencer doesn't necessarily, right, kill us or means that experiencing, whatever it might be, ceases. But the onus, the pressure, the performance anxiety of orientation lapses. That's the gift. That's the redignification, right? Redignifying the, just for fun, sacred majesty of being with the cessation of the experiencer. And there's no how to. Though everything you could say is, a symptom of how to.
Once that part eases in me, one that wants to comment, record,
Yes.
recall, count
Mm-hmm.
for what was just described.
That's right. My CFO.
Once that part is relaxed,
Uh-huh.
then the most ordinary of moments has a real palatable presence.
Grandeur.
And you wouldn't know it from any other one. It wouldn't be like, hey,
Yeah.
I want to, this is really something. This could be just very ordinary.
Yes.
And that's what's kind of fascinating to me, because
Yeah.
it won't sell a book per se.
No.
It won't wow the masses. Yet at the same time, it's very palatably, accessibly present
Yes.
in so many ways.
Oh. Yeah.
Without having to dance a jig or whistle
Right.
Dixie or chant, in a profound way.
Yep. That to me, what anthropologically speaking, sociologically speaking, release from superstition of religion, of science, of causality, of the pressure that accompanies these, involuntary appetites, the performance anxiety to be relevant even to oneself. As all of that mishigas, Yiddish word, collapses, what do we got?
It was so much more spacious.
Oh man, is it good. And I mean, do I need to have my idea or somebody else's idea of, either a, blaming or forgiving God to clutter it up? I sure hope not.
Oh, boy.
I don't want any companions when I am myself. Or everything is my companion when I am myself. I certainly don't want to be, subservient to some kind of imagined authority or creator that's other than me, other than this. I just don't.
Yeah, I can see how your natural protestations come out with quite a liveliness as you've described it. Because it's almost like the moment wants to be awake, more awake, and this suggestion is like a hypnotic sleep of adoration, of something always just out of reach, like that greyhound running like hell
Oh,
for the little rabbit.
yeah, the mechanical rabbit, no less.
The mechanical rabbit.
Yeah.
And you just grab the machine and say, give them the damn thing. It's just a piece of fuzz. It's not a rabbit.
Yeah. So this is, whatever this is, and thank goodness I don't know what it is. But we can through, call it clumsy conversation where no one has anything special Certainly no robes, no credentials, no nothing. No nothing. Just, wow. Kind of baby steps or walk our way into freedom from validation. Nothing is made right, nothing is made wrong. No practice is accomplished. With such delicious, palpable emptiness. I mean, even using the word fruition is kind of a stretch. The wandering self thinks in terms of, right, being in a condition and, of course, pining for a better or alternate condition, either through attraction and aversion, right? Getting rid of suffering or finding exotica that, enthralls one. That wandering self is whatever, a product of restlessness, a product of orientation, temporal and spatial presumption that one is in a condition and is displeased with that condition and seeks to cultivate a different condition. And then, so that's how all of the, money changers take advantage of we who are vulnerable and confused. Because I'll pay, right, to be told about, and then, of course, go to the gift shop to get all of the accoutrements. So then I can practice your gift to me, which is the way to get out of my condition.
That's right.
So I'll buy your books and your CDs and, candles that you sell, and I'll join a group that, listens to your recorded talks every once or twice a month and have tea and cookies and conversation.
The Wizard of Oz story with Dorothy, she knew tap her shoes in the beginning, the story would never have
Yeah.
unfolded.
Yeah.
It's almost like there, again, something wants to, not, I don't know, wants to, but the struggle pushes something out. I mean, it's sort of like a birth, I guess.
Whatever the hell this is, it apparently pleases it to be, delusional to the point of extinction. Or once in a while, someone gets a break and wakes up, to intimacy, right? Freedom from codependency, freedom from authority, freedom from being under the thumb of something or someone that was here before me, that should be credited with the creation of the universe. Ar, 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 ar.
Can't help but the sense that that spell will be broken. And it is broken now and then, but I mean en masse.
Well, that's fun. I mean,
But maybe that's just a,
that's cool. I mean, that's kind of an Eckhart Tolleism. But why not be, enthusiastic and look forward to the breaking of, right, the cosmic hypnosis.
it's going to be equally upsetting too.
Boy, this can just, right, change
Like
on a
waking up the
dime.
dragon, and he was having a good dream when you woke him up. It's like he's not too happy about
Yeah,
waking up
yeah.
in your timing. just find it really ironic that I'm looking at the word peace on the wall, that I could find peace in acknowledging that I can be a real ass sometimes, or I can be really impatient, I can be really intense, I can be really apparently energetically intimidating
Sure.
to others. And years ago, to actually acknowledge that or admit it would be like, wasn't even consideration,
Yeah, right.
because I cultivated this personality
Sure.
that didn't have those things in it.
You imagined you had.
Right.
Yeah, so
Right.
we fall under the
So-
spell of our own imagination and the cultivation of, you know, a compensatory idealized persona.
Yeah.
That either pursues attention seeking or, right, eschews
Exactly.
attention seeking.
Exactly.
But we still have no idea who we are or how we're showing up or how people are perceiving us.
Yeah. But it's kind of cool to just surrender to, the world that sees you a certain way. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
am I invested in my many decades of cultivation of some image that I find
yeah,
harmonious and peaceful to me as whatever? Or is it just what it is? And I find peace, I guess,
yeah.
in the fact that the biggest a-hole I've judged is
Mhm.
me, really.
Of course.
Takes one to know one, really.
Yeah, right.
So can I be that way? It's like, damn, yeah. Do that in the privacy of my own brain or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
And
You're the most fictional character you know.
there's something relaxes inside. It's like, okay, I don't have to, prove some idealized, maintain some idealized personality. People are surprised when I tell them that. I said, do I appear to be this way? Oh yeah, beautiful one. I said, if I told you that I'm really not that way,
Yeah.
and I have this and this, no, I can't imagine that. I
Uh-huh.
said, well, imagine it.
Imagine it.
It's true.
Yeah. Please imagine something more about me.
But it invites them to say, I see you have an idealized image of me. You've obviously probably generated one for yourself.
Oh man, I mean, look what we're up
So-
against.
So it's
This
always a two-way street.
This is self-generating, involuntarily generating, absolute hypnotic inference about myself or about what I think I'm perceiving or other so-called people or how we're relating and whether that's working for you and whether it's as good for you as it is for me or not, whether our encounter is really worth a nice menthol cigarette after we're through. We don't know what's going on. Maybe some acknowledgement of that, kind of innate naivete and some quality of undefendedness that may accompany it. That one, might be able to relax inwardly and then in the company
That's
of
right.
others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's like, yeah, okay, this is just right.
Even if in a moment before I was in full colorful
Yeah.
regalia of
Right.
defense.
Yes.
That just happened yesterday. Confronted about how intense I can be, how judgmental I was or whatever. Like, yeah, but and then I caught myself because she was gently persistent,
Mhm.
wanting me to hear a certain thing. And yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can own that. Next. Yeah, I think one of the things I appreciate too about being in energy like this is you fielded certainly many judgments directed at you, and you obviously found a way to find peace and navigate in spite of it,
Yeah.
you know, and it's allowed me to embrace the spectrum of possibility in me as well,
Sure.
and let it ride and
Yep.
get over it, and the next moment occur, and identify, disidentify.
Yeah. When and as a certain emptiness of self, um, arises, makes itself known, and we, in the way that we do, honor that a certain emptiness of self, and then occupy or inhabit yielding. I'm right. I mean, if I'm not preoccupied, if my mind is not preoccupied and telling me stories, and I'm in fierce agreement or disagreement with all of this, right, momentum, then there's a certain kind of yielding. It's an ease, right, of ease of being. And, the nourishment is palpable, not merely by the absence of that which annoys us, but by the presence of a palpable, radiant, euphoric certainty. Palpable. That's nourishment.
I guess it seems naturally apropos to silence the noise in a given moment when it's so full.
Yes, that's right.
You really don't need your
Oh, yes.
whatever it is,
That's right.
the preach energy, the
Yeah.
let me tell you how it is, let me beat you over the head with it kind
Yeah.
of energy, like enough already.
The default of the, roving, perpetually dissatisfied self, stuck in the Minotaur's layer of time, space, and condition, goes into abeyance. So we're like grateful beyond words that, right, the momentum, the inertia of my imagination is emptied out.
Uncompelled by protocol.
Yeah, baby. Right. And that's, it certainly, it nourishes me as a motivator, right, to
Mhm.
have these conversations and have them as frequently as the market will bear.
A little deeper.
Yeah. A salon where you can be yourself without having to be yourself.
I just got this funny image, like, electricity bumps electrons,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like that, your identity gets bumped over there, and your identity gets bumped over here, and all of a sudden everyone's like, wait a minute, who am I now?
Yeah.
What the hell just happened?
Shoosh.
It's like, whoa, we're free radicals,
Free radicals.
The electron thinks it's stuck on Dave, it's like, no, man.
If anarchy is worth cultivating, my bias would be that release and relief from the imagination of self is the most profound anarchy. That's a life changer. That's a world changer.
Who you think you are is really not really not that profound. Like that writer that had literally 26 images of himself in past lives that soul portraiture people did, and it was a king and a pharaoh and a great warrior and all these incredible beings. And I said, well, who are you in this life? He goes, oh, I'm a writer. a little overweight,
Mhm.
meek, modest writer. So that's really out of the usual context.
Yeah,
It should chill in this lifetime.
really, for how great you've been up to this point.
Just got a kick out of it because I could see myself and that like what the kid does. He dreams of being the head of the pack, saving the world with a semi-machine gun. If you grow up in the '60s watching war on TV every day,
Oh yeah, I want to be just like Patty Hearst.
or like Jerry Lewis, a goofy guy that makes all kinds of funny sounds after kissing a girl. Who knows what? Tony Curtis riding his racing car, or Richie Blackmore smashing his guitar on stage.
Fantastic imagery, yeah. That's right.
For me, I wanted both. I was steering the race car with my feet while
Playing air
the
guitar.
electric guitar with a big amplifier and winning the race,
Nice. There you go.
going past Mario Andretti.
That's right.
Like you do anything, right? Talk about identity, wanting it all.
Oh yeah. Without having to enroll anyone in a, preemptive cosmology. That's what we're accustomed to, right? When we go to various places that we go to be with other people, um, in the religious New Age cosmic ways. It's getting enrolled in a cosmology or enrolled in experience or, being accosted by a life coach or,
I mean, I need a charge.
soliciting donations, right? All this pressure. But, people tend to be kind of uncomfortable not having the safety net of a cosmology or some kind of predeterminism, just to hang out casually and look at the texture and the nature of consciousness and vulnerability and human experience and let it all in and see right through it, and let it all in and see right through it, and discover something that is absolutely ineffable outside of the context of spirituality or religion or enlightenment speak or anything. Or have to be clever about using the right combination of dual and non-duality terminology to make sure that, you're on the right track or something. I mean, track to where?
Reminds me of the group of Japanese, and this one guy, kind of a master of sorts, grow rice as it was traditionally grown.
Mm-hmm.
And step by step, they said, what if we didn't do this? Oh, still working good. What if we didn't do that? And he kept undoing all these assumptions.
Yeah.
What if we didn't grow it in water? Oh, it's working good. What if we did? And he stripped it way down from all the assumptions.
Nice.
Tons of assumptions.
Right.
In how it had to be done optimally. And how often do we do that? I mean, it was just a fascinating feeling that it suggested, which challenged the norm of, again, a complicated sequence of processes in order to attain the right frequency of awareness in its grandest sense.
Yeah. Right. I mean, our tendency is to become grandiose more than right
More than
zero.
simplified.
Yeah, we tend towards grandiose rather than, you know.
How many people looking for that Kundalini energy
Oh,
advance? And I go, are you sure you want to up the voltage on this? Are you
really?
really, really sure you want to up the voltage on this?
Really?
You might want to.
Yeah. Are you going to put your toe in the socket or your tongue? What's it going to be? And upping the voltage, which we of course, understand, easily understand, but upping the voltage, you could say, is a kind of a involuntary, right, non-belligerent refusal of what this already is. Right, it's through familiarity breeds contempt. So it's right through the movement of mind and orientation and space, time and condition and memory and emotion and knowledge and things read and da 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 that we become habituated to or insensitive to the inarticulable thrill of presence when there's no one special at home. What happens in us or to us or as us if this actually is enough? More challenging, more than enough. That's a strange discovery.
As that one time in meditation, he said, you had everything you could ever want or wish for here and now in just the perfect measure.
Yeah.
Then what? And
Yeah.
someone responded, I would miss my longing.
Honest.
Yeah.
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 It's not so easy, to pass through these kinds of luscious membranes of identity. Yeah, am I willing to miss my longing? Would I be willing to discover a quality of being that was without want?
Jet without propulsion in a way.
Yeah.
I'm a jet and no propulsion.
That's
a depressed jet. I want to gas off.
Is the nature of being conditional? And if I discover once, twice, a few times that it's not, wow.
I really can live without.
Thanks, folks. Nice to see you all. Stay in touch.